the government has taken due note of the pastoral letter issued by the Zimbabwe Catholic Bishops' Conference on 14 August 2020, a communication which sadly betrays a markedly unspiritual determination on the part of its authors to breach what is and must always remain the unbreachable firewall between politics and religion in our country. That they have chosen this moment to add their voices to what has become a shrill, politically motivated cacophony masked as moral outrage on the basis of a deliberate misrepresentation of recent events in Zimbabwe is both regrettable and deeply disappointing. For the most part, the Catholic Church and the state have always coexisted well in Zimbabwe. Where disagreements or tensions have arisen, it is generally when the church has overstepped its spiritual boundaries and trespassed into the realm of the secular, as appears to be the intention now of the venerable Archbishop and his colleagues. Whereas one would have expected a communication from the Catholic Church, indeed any church in that case, to focus on uniting people in Christ and in bringing people together, the pastoral letter of 14 August appears designed to have the exact opposite effect. And in its sweeping and bridled criticism of government, clearly aligns itself with the recent wave of deliberate, misleading media hype focused on a supposedly Zimbabwe in crisis, by allowing themselves to be manipulated into joining what is so clearly a fabrication based on distortion, invention, and outright falsehood. The Catholic Church does itself injury and its followers a major disservice. There is no crisis in Zimbabwe. The country is not on the brink of any form of socio-economic implosion. Certainly the country, like so many on our continent and in the wider developing world, is facing a myriad of challenges compounded over the past 4 months or so by the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. But as it has always done, government is doing its uttermost to address those challenges in the best interest of all Zimbabweans. Instead of partisan, highly political posturing, the expectation of government, indeed of all Zimbabweans, is that our church leaders, including those of the Catholic Church, would seek to lend their voices and influence in support of the efforts government is making to heal the deep polarization which persists in our country, to unify the nation as one under God, and to work to improve the lives and livelihoods of all those who call Zimbabwe home. Given this unfortunate situation and the resultant controversy, it is necessary that government communicates its general observation and responses to the issues raised by the bishops. I'll start by the general observations. The pastoral letter makes numerous accusations of a very serious nature against an elected and constitutionally established government without providing any specific detail on any of the alleged transgressions. The impression created thereof is that the authors did not fully apply their minds to the various issue areas that they raise. Rather, the letter appears to have been crafted by persons whose intention it was to level as many allegations as possible with an overall objective of simply smearing and ridiculing the government of Zimbabwe. At no stage have the authors of the letter, either as individuals or as a collective, sought to engage the government. I repeat, at no stage have the authors of the letter, either as individuals or as a collective sought to engage the government of Zimbabwe on any level in order to gather an understanding of its position on any of the issues raised. As an example, the authors refer to allegations of human rights abuses and what they term, and I quote, unprecedented crackdown on dissent, close quote, without providing any shred of evidence to support that assertion. The letter also refers to the recent visit to Zimbabwe of a team of special envoys dispatched by the President of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, but does so in a manner which betrays the fact that their stated concerns are based entirely on highly misleading social media and newspaper reporting. The government notes that the Catholic bishops have made a conscious decision to avoid direct engagement, opting instead for grandstanding and what amounts to politically motivated mudslinging. Whilst it is not the intention of government to respond in kind by stepping into the ring and engaging in an undignified brawl with the venerable bishops, it is nonetheless incumbent upon government to comment on the many issues raised in the recent pastoral letter. On corruption, the Catholic bishops raised the issue of corruption. And you recall that in his inauguration address to the nation in November 2017, His Excellency President Edim Mnangagwa identified the fight against corruption as one of the main objectives of his administration. Tangible and independently verifiable evidence abounds to confirm the serious ongoing implementation of this commitment. Firstly, there was the establishment of special anti-corruption courts. As a policy directive from the government, the Judicial Service Commission has established special anti-corruption courts that are partially and specifically dedicated to the conduct of corruption-related trials. The Magistrate Court at Harare has 5 special anti-corruption courts and 8 magistrate courts. The Bulawayo Magistrate Court has 3 such courts. In addition, there is a special anti-corruption court in every province, with the exception of Marsh West, Mashonaland West, and Matabeleland South, where the court will be established soon. B, the strengthening of anti-corruption institutions. The President established the Special Anti-Corruption Unit within his own office in order to investigate and prosecute serious cases of corruption under the direction of the Prosecutor General. The Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission has been strengthened by the appointment of Justice Lois Matada Moyo as chairperson, followed by the reconstitution of the institution by way of appointment of new commissioners. A combination of these policy decisions has resulted in an increase of the number of corruption cases being prosecuted in our courts. Thirdly, the establishment of the Justice Uchena-led Commission of Inquiry into the sale of state land in and around urban areas since 2005. The commission was appointed on the 1st of February 2018 and submitted its findings on the 10th of December 2019. These findings are in the public domain. As a result of these findings, prosecutions of those implicated in corrupt land transactions have commenced. More than a dozen Harare City Council officials have since appeared before the court. Indeed, the mayor of Harare himself, Councillor H. Gomba, has been arrested and charged on allegation of corruption involving land deals. High-profile corruption prosecutions. Since the inception of the Second Republic, a number of high-profile corruption-linked prosecutions have been conducted in our courts. The accused persons include senior officials in parastatals, senior government officials, and even sitting and former cabinet ministers. Samuel Ndenge, a former cabinet minister, was prosecuted, convicted, and subsequently jailed for corrupt activities and abuse of office. 2 other serving cabinet ministers, that is Priska Mfumira and Dr. Obadiah Moyo, were dismissed from their posts on the basis of alleged corruption and abuse of office. Mfumira's trial is underway, whilst Dr. Moyo is currently on remand awaiting trial. A former State House Principal Director, Douglas Tapuma, was arrested, charged, convicted and jailed for corruption. It is pertinent to note that the prosecution of corruption cases is completely apolitical. Members of both ZANU-PF and opposition party members have found themselves arraigned before the courts on allegations of corruption. The prosecution of corruption cases is therefore itself free from corruption. In their pastoral letter, the Catholic bishops make reference to the Book of Micah. Their exhortations in this regard are most welcome. However, the unmistakable impression conveyed by their letter is that in Zimbabwe, corruption is practiced exclusively by government leaders and officials. In fact, corruption knows no political, economic, or social bounds. It is a scourge that afflicts all sections of our society, including churches and religious groupings. Corruption is equally rife in the private sector. It is therefore unfortunate that the bishops have, by omission, sought to absolve anyone outside government from the sin of corruption. This is misinformation, and it is morally incumbent upon the bishops to correct the impression they have created. In their criticism of government, the bishops also make much of the widely touted phrase, catch and release, so popularized today by social media. Had the bishops taken time to consult adequately among their congregants and legal practitioners, they would have learned that in terms of our constitution, it is permissible for accused persons to be released on bail, pending the commencement of their trial. Again, it appears that the venerable bishops have relied heavily on social media hype in the crafting of their pastoral letter. In addition to their heavy focus on corruption, the bishops also raise a number of other issues which merit clarification by government. Firstly, the arrest of journalists who expose corruption. The Catholic bishops insinuate that some journalists have been arrested for exposing corruption. For the record, only one journalist, Wopo Chimon, has been arrested, but not for anything related to his reporting on corruption. He is actually facing charges of incitement to violence in contravention of our laws. The Catholic bishops, who clearly are well acquainted with social media, will be aware that Chimono was openly encouraging the public to defy the law, to confront the government, and to bring down the downfall thereof. The Zimbabwe independent newspapers, Newsday, the Daily News, and the Herald all regularly publish articles focusing on corruption involving public officials and others. None of their reporters have been arrested or harassed for their articles on corruption. Then the National Prosecuting Authority and the judiciary were also attacked. The Catholic bishops make unfounded claims that the NPA, the judiciary, and our Chapter 12 institutions are compromised. Of course, they provide no factual evidence to substantiate these assertions. On the contrary, there exists abundant evidence suggesting the exact opposite. I'll start with the NPA, the National Prosecuting Authority. The NPA retains full independence in all its operations. This is clear from the identities and status of some of the high-profile corruption cases I mentioned earlier. As is known, some of those cases include persons who are said to be close to the president, some who sit in cabinet and or in the highest policy-making body of the ruling party. I will then turn to the judiciary. There is a plethora of evidence demonstrating the independence of the judiciary in our courts, where decisions are made in accordance with the merits of each case. For instance, in the period between 1st of February to 15 May 2020, the High Court in Harare had a total of 25 cases in which government was a party to proceedings against various litigants. Of these cases, only 6 were ruled in favor of government. The remaining 19 cases were ruled against government. For the bishops to suggest that the judiciary is not independent is demonstrable false, and one can only wonder at the motivation behind such misrepresentation. Each time a judgment is against the government, they celebrate. The next time, if the government is the judgment is in favor of government, the judiciary is captured. We wonder what kind of people are that. And I think it's very unfair. The statistics are there to show that the majority of cases government is losing, and it accepts the verdict. When in few occasions when government wins its case, then what that means is government has captured the institution, which we feel is hypocrisy of the highest order. I'll turn to Chapter 12 institutions. The bishops allege that the Chapter 12 institutions are not independent. For the record, Chapter 12 institutions include the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, the Zimbabwe Media Commission, and the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission. It should be noted that government has achieved the full operationalization of all these institutions and that their independence is assured in the Constitution. For instance, over the past 2 years, the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission has published several reports that are critical of government. Although government has strongly disagreed with those reports, neither the Commission nor any of its members have attracted any adverse consequences. To expand further, recently the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission released a report on the case involving 3 MDCA women, namely Joanna Mamombe, Cecilia Chimbiri, and Netsai Maroa, who alleged they were kidnapped by state agents. Although the police have now obtained incontrovertible evidence in the form of video and CCTV footage demonstrating the falsity of their allegations, government has not commented nor has it sought to publicly humiliate the commission or any of the commissioners for their gullibility. New commissioners have recently been appointed to the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission and to the Zimbabwe Media Commission in a fully open and transparent process witnessed by all Zimbabweans. Any suggestion, therefore, that the independence of Chapter 12 institution is somehow compromised is completely without foundation. I'll turn to the issue of nation building that the bishops touched on. His Excellency President E.D. Mnangagwa has gone to extraordinary lengths to create a spirit of peace, unity and cohesion amongst all Zimbabweans. The Catholic bishops will of course have noted that right at the beginning of the election campaign period leading up to the July 28 elections, His Excellency President Mnangagwa invited without discrimination a global contingent of election observers that included the EU, the United States of America, both of which had previously been barred from performing observation duties for more than two decades. The election campaign period was itself peaceful, largely because of President Mnangagwa's persistent and consistent exhortations to Zimbabweans to remain peaceful. In June 2018, an assassination attempt was made on President Mnangagwa. This incident had the potential to drive Zimbabwe into an abyss of retributive violence against suspects. Zimbabwe remained peaceful and the elections were held despite the assassination attempt. This cannot be ascribed to anything other than the fact that His Excellency absolve the opposition from this dastardly act, he made a resolute decision that the election will be held on the scheduled date, notwithstanding the attempt on his life. After the violence of 1st August 2018, where opposition MDC members set alight ZANU-PF vehicles in the ZANU-PF provincial headquarters, setting in motion a course of events which resulted in the death of 6 Zimbabweans, the president appointed a commission of inquiry made up of respected international luminaries. The commission was led by the former president of South Africa, His Excellency Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe. This commission was televised with an open invitation to all, including political parties, to testify in a spirit of transparency. In February 2019, His Excellency the President, E.G. Mnangagwa, invited all political parties to a dialogue platform called the Political Actors Dialogue, POLAD. The objective of POLAD is to create a new platform where political actors who have divergent political views meet to discuss issues affecting Zimbabweans on an equal footing. This gesture has been fully endorsed by the African Union and the Southern African Development Community SADC, who recognize the importance of this multi-party forum in creating an atmosphere of peace and harmony in our country. In addition to the above, His Excellency formed a grouping called the Presidential Advisory Council, PAC, whose membership is not restricted to members of his own party, but includes persons representative of all sectors, including journalists, the clergy, lawyers, and business people, some of whom are highly critical of government. As an illustration, Pastor Shingi Muyeza is a member of PAC and is also a government-appointed director of Zim Papers Holdings. The Catholic bishops would have noted that recently, Pastor Muyeza has used his church sermons to call for the removal of the government of Zimbabwe in language that cannot be described as moderate. Not only has Shingi Muyeza retained his position in PAC and at Zim Papers, but no consequences have visited Pastor Muyeza, for instance. In light of the foregoing, on what basis do the Catholic bishops in their eminent wisdom state that, and I quote, our government automatically labels anyone thinking differently as an enemy of the country? That is an abuse, unquote. Regrettably, this statement amounts to a deliberate gross misrepresentation of facts whose intention is to smear the government of Zimbabwe. I will now turn to issues of international relations. Although the pastoral letter dwells on many issues affecting the well-being and livelihood of Zimbabweans, the pastoral letter does not criticize, let alone condemn, the effect of punitive sanctions which have brought untold suffering upon the Zimbabwean people. Both SADC and the AU have on numerous occasions publicly called upon the USA to lift the sanctions against Zimbabwe. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for the removal of unilateral sanctions against weak countries such as Zimbabwe in light of COVID-19 pandemic, as these are detrimental prospects of the victim nations. This indeed is a noble acknowledgement of the adverse effects of sanctions on the well-being of the general citizenry. Further, the UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, Ms. Hila Elva, has called for the immediate lifting of sanctions on Syria, Venezuela, Iran, Cuba, and Zimbabwe, noting that, and I quote, such measures severely undermine the ordinary citizens' fundamental right to sufficient and adequate food in light of COVID-19 pandemic, unquote. I now turn to the issue of Gukura Hundi that the pastoral letter makes reference to. The government of Zimbabwe is determined that this matter should not be used as a convenient political tool by any political player, organization, or individual. I repeat, the government of Zimbabwe and His Excellency is determined that this matter should not be used as a convenient political tool by any political player, organization, or individual. In March 2019, His Excellency commenced dialogue with Matabeleland-based civil society organizations and chiefs. Gukurahundi was identified in the dialogue as an issue requiring urgent attention. Significantly, President E.D. Mnangagwa unambiguously stated that Zimbabweans are now free to discuss the issue of Gukurahundi candidly without fear of arrest and victimization of any sort. Since March 2020, government has engaged the people of Matabeleland directly on a number of issues. Recently, on the 29th of June 2020, the Minister of Home Affairs and Cultural Heritage, Honorable Kazembe Kazembe, held meetings with Matabeleland civil society organizations to discuss the implementation of resolutions that were met, including issuing of birth and death certificates that are linked to Gukurahundi. Dialogue under the auspices of the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission, NPRC, and the government of Zimbabwe is going on the issue of exhumations linked to Gukurahundi. The subject of Gukurahundi is, however, of such a sensitive nature that it cannot be resolved through grandstanding. Dialogue on the issue continues. Government regrets any attempt to derail the progressive and peaceful process that is currently gaining momentum in those Gukurahundi engagements. In conclusion, the government of Zimbabwe reiterates that perhaps the most unsettling feature of the pastoral letter is the inescapable fact that, by way of tone, tenure, and their reliance on vague conjecture, innuendo, and even outright falsehoods, the Catholic bishops appear to have chosen to enter into the Zimbabwe political arena. The letter is crafted in outrightly combative language, which is both inappropriately prescriptive and grossly disrespectful, aggressively questioning Zimbabwe's electoral promises and deriding its efforts across multi-sectors of engagement. Whereas government has no quarrel at all with justifiable and reasoned criticism, let such censure be researched and or evidence-based rather than a mere regurgitation of falsehoods and distortions fabricated for the most part by anonymous political activists and malcontents using and indeed abusing social media platforms. Since assuming office, His Excellency President E.D. Mnangagwa has chosen a deliberate path of respectful and inclusive engagement with the Catholic Church and indeed with all other religious groupings in Zimbabwe. His appointment of church representatives to the Presidential Advisory Council PAC illustrates his open arms approach to dialogue and engagement. Notwithstanding the deliberate, provocative and divisive nature of the pastoral letter, the President's commitment to the path of engagement with all religious communities remains steadfast and solid. With specific regard to the letter and with a view to preserving and maintaining long-standing cordial relations with the Catholic Church, government will avail itself of existing diplomatic channels to engage the Church to more fully understand and appreciate the actions of its local representative. In this regard, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Honorable Retired Lieutenant General Dr. S.B. Moyo, will be meeting Apostolic Nunes, the diplomatic representative of the Holy See accredited to Zimbabwe. Of key importance in this regard is a phrase within the pastoral letter which is of deep concern. In their writing, the Catholic bishops states thusly, and I quote, it is not clear to us as your bishops that the national leadership that we have has the knowledge, social skill, emotional stability, and social orientation to handle the issues we face as a nation, unquote. This statement constitutes an outright insult to the person of His Excellency, the President E.D. Mnangagwa, and his entire government, and is couched in language decidedly unbecoming of an institution such as the Catholic Church. Given that the venerable bishops represent the Catholic Church, government is compelled to directly engage the Vatican in order to ascertain whether or not such statements reflect the official attitude of the Holy See towards Zimbabwe's leadership, or whether these are merely the views of the various individuals concerned. Finally, government and indeed all Zimbabweans look to the Church for spiritual succor. Whenever citizens are embroiled in dispute or confrontation, it is the Church which often seeks to intercede and by way of reason and compassion to calm the troubled waters. The tone and tenor of the pastoral letter reflects a complete repudiation of such a role. The entire thrust of the letter is anti-government and accusatory. Not a single statement therein calls upon anyone other than the government to engage or to interact in a peaceful, non-violent manner. On the contrary, the letter seeks to further entrench the polarization which already afflicts our society and nation. In some respects, the language and tone of the letter is eerily similar to the statements, tweets, and other commentaries emanating from some diplomatic quarters in Harare, specifically in its reference to corruption and the impact of punitive sanctions. It would be more than unfortunate if the local Catholic leadership is elected to align itself with foreign agendas and external interference in Zimbabwe's domestic affairs. The Catholic Church is a broad-based religious institution which draws its membership from Zimbabweans of all political persuasions and background. It can be a very powerful force for good within our country, especially in terms of promoting peace, harmony, and social cohesion. It cannot and should not ever stray from that role. It has no place within the secular and often highly robust world of local politics. The President and his government remain committed to open engagement and dialogue with the Catholic Church and all other religious communities in order to broaden ongoing national dialogue and the quest for broad-based, inclusive solutions to the many challenges which continue to confront our young republic. That is my statement in response to the pastoral letter. However, I just want to give a definition that I found of what a pastoral letter is, so that you can judge for yourself what the motive was. If you go and look in the dictionary what a pastoral letter is, a pastoral letter is often called simply a pastoral is an open letter addressed by a bishop to the clergy or laity of a diocese or to both, containing general instruction or consolation or directions for behavior in particular circumstances. If you read the note of the letter, they are telling people what to do, and I'm sure I've read it. And if you look at the definition of what a pastoral letter is, you can also judge for yourselves what they were calling the masses of Zimbabwe to do. I thank you.